Ever since recovering from brain damage, I see ghosts everywhere. Posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Where Is My Monkey? About 15 years ago, I had a brain infection that caused some extensive brain damage. Through a process called neuroplasticity, my brain rewired itself around the damaged parts. Besides being able to speak, walk, and read again, I sometimes now see shadowy, dark figures in the room with me. Sometimes they're animals, sometimes they're people. They're too indistinct to make out facial features or clothing. The humans act oblivious to me, and most of them seem as if they're just passing by purposefully. The animals interact. More than once I have felt a cat jump on the bed and walk towards me, only to open my eyes and there's nothing there. Dogs will brush my leg under the table, and we don't have a dog. Sometimes instead of people or animals, there will be odors. The perfume of an older woman, or oranges, or hotel soap, localized to a specific place and unaffected by fans. At first I thought they were latent memories being reactivated by a newly formed synapse, but they've happened in places I've never been and more animals than I've ever known. I've talked to both my therapist and neurologist about this, and both of them said pretty much the same thing. Who knows? Sometimes people with brain damage develop abilities they never had before, like speaking with a French accent, or suddenly being able to play piano. As long as they're not bothering me, why worry? I'm not worried, I just wonder what they are. Additional info: an unknown virus got into my brain and started an infection, meningitis, which slowly began to swell and block blood vessels to parts of the brain. Memory was the first to go, then motor skills, then verbal. Because the process was so slow, doctors thought it was an early onset Alzheimer's. When they finally realized it was a viral infection, and I got the meds, the mental degradation stopped. The doctors told my family the damage was permanent, and I'd still be a potato. However, my recovery was so phenomenal. Ironically, doctors now point to me and my brain as part of a UCSF study on Alzheimer's. My short-term memory only began working about 5 years ago. It was also about that time the shadow people began to show up. First it was a figure passing by my periphery vision. Then it was ducking behind corners or disappearing before I could catch a good look. Eventually they just started appearing, nonchalantly passing by through a door, down a hallway, or just showing up to fade away. The animals, specifically cats, came first though, and would visit in bed. I have never felt any animosity or any type of recognition from the shadow people. Grandpa is seeing ghosts, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Shrink the Prank. So my grandpa is 90 years old. He's not 100% mentally clear, but has been checked for Alzheimer and other brain stuff and came out clear. Lately, he's called me a lot and asked if I was home at his house. He says he's seeing ghosts and one of them looks like me. He often asks them about things, but they never even look at him or answer him. Most of my family think he's just old and his brain is playing tricks on him. I think otherwise. Once I was at his house and something weird happened. He has his cloth with a bell on the end that was on the wall. Me and my family were right about to leave when this bell suddenly rang while I was looking at it. The bell was not light and needs a good push to make any sound, so it couldn't have been wind, and no one touched it in any way. I was the only one to see it, and I think his house might be haunted. He says he's not afraid of ghosts, it's just weird that it's now he sees them and not the 50 other years he's lived there. Maybe he is old, or maybe there really are ghosts there. Ranting about my creepy old house, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Audrey Lynn 923. I lived in a large 4-story home in an old neighborhood in Maryland for about a year while in college. The house was built in 1890, and the man who owned it before my landlord had died there. His name was Francis. We don't know a lot about him, except he was a mean-spirited man and lived alone in the 6-bedroom house. The girls that lived in the house before us told us they heard footsteps on the basement steps occasionally, and once while they were having a party, the door opened by itself. Now, I chalked that up to a drunk college girl being afraid of a big old house. But when I moved in, I started to wonder if their stories had some truth to them. The room I lived in originally was the parlor and had 2 giant sliding pocket doors with a latch to keep them closed. I had to buy a lock for the latch within a month of living there because at night the doors would rattle open. When I brought this up to one of my housemates, she told me that she had a dream that made her wake up. And when she did, there was a man's face right in hers, which disappeared as soon as she opened her eyes, and she only caught a flash of it. After that, for a while, we just lived with this creepy noise, and my door would still rattle, but because of the lock, it would not open. We instated a rule in the house that no one was allowed to say Francis's name, because it seemed like when we did, the activity would pick up again. But for the most part, I could ignore it. Then one night I was getting ready for a party in front of the mirror while my boyfriend was sitting on the bed. My mirror is about 32 by 40 and was leaning at a slight angle against the wall, resting on the top of my dresser so that it was angled slightly upwards. My boyfriend had been trying to freak me out by talking about Francis earlier, but I was trying to ignore him while doing my makeup. All of a sudden, my mirror fell towards me and slammed into my face. If it was going to fall for normal reasons, it would have slid bottom first based on the way it was angled. But it basically flew away from the wall at me. The whole thing was really scary, and the next day I nailed the mirror to the wall to make sure it didn't happen again. After moving out of the house a year later, I did some research and found out that Francis had died in the house in the 70s, and it had been abandoned from then until my landlord bought it in the 90s. So I don't know if it was Francis causing all this trouble or maybe something happened while it was abandoned. There were other really odd things in that house, which I'll explain if you want, but I just wanted to tell someone this because most people I talk to about it don't believe me and roll their eyes. The Longest Goodbye, posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Park Place 38. One of the strangest calls happened right when my grandmother died. She was losing a battle to leukemia and was at the hospital with her family there to say goodbye. I was home at the time, still in high school, and just kind of texted my mom on what was going on. They left me behind in a rush to go get her. When my mom finally sent a text saying very simply, "She has moved on," the telephone rang. It was late at night and I'd already been pretty spooked. When I hastily picked up the landline, I answered with a very common, "Hello?" There was a white, steady noise for 2 to 3 seconds, and then a female voice recording simply answered, "Goodbye," and the line would end. Freaked out and already in tears at the loss, I quickly went upstairs and locked my door. This was just too much of a coincidence to not be something supernatural. When my parents got home, I told them. Both of them are pretty open-minded, and they seemed skeptical at first, so in a huff I went to bed. I got to the stairs, started to go up, and I kid you not, the phone rang and I stopped. I listened to my mother answer the phone and ask, "Hello?" twice, and then a hushed whisper and the receiver clicked shut. They both came to the stairs and apologized for not believing me and explained the exact scenario back to me on what happened over the phone. For 2 whole weeks, this happened exactly when I woke up, got home, and roughly around 8 p.m. every day. Finally, and I'm not kidding, I answered the phone when I got home and said, "Grandma, I love you too. Goodbye." There was a second of white noise and then,
"Goodbye."
it never called back. We tried calling the number and looking it up, but it didn't exist, only that with our area code. Let me tell you, coincidence or not, that was the creepiest thing ever to happen over the phone with me. Was the dog protecting me from something I couldn't see? Posted in the Paranormal subreddit by Mr. J91. Let me first provide background information to the events with the dog. A week before this past Christmas, I had weight loss surgery. I was still early on in recovery when I went to spend New Year's Eve with my girlfriend. We were sitting on her bed in her room, and the dog, Tarzan is his name, was sleeping at the end of the bed. Out of nowhere, Tarzan jolted out of his sleep and tried to lay on top of me. My girlfriend pushed him off due to the 20-pound weight restriction I was on. Then he sat straight up and stared across the room. We said his name multiple times, snapped, clapped, even touched him, but nothing could break his focus on whatever he may have seen. After about a minute, he snapped out of the trance he seemed to be in and went back to sleep. Tarzan is very loyal to me, and, as previously said, I was still weak and recovering from surgery, so I think he was trying to protect me from whatever he saw. Has anyone else had an experience similar to this with pets, dogs in particular?